Jetstar is an Australian budget airline brand which does have some mixed reviews. Despite that, the budget arm of the Qantas Airlines Group has been successfully able to start ventures in Asia, specifically in Japan and Singapore, along with a venture in Vietnam it exited last year. Along with Japan, Singapore, and Vietnam, the airline was also eyeing another location for a Jetstar brand airline. That city was Hong Kong, a major financial, economic, and aviation hub in the region. While known as a place for foreign companies to set up shop and connect to China, it was a host of a failed attempt to start a new airline brand for Jetstar, Jetstar Hong Kong, which never really got to see its first flight take off. It was a failed launch of a startup airline, and this video will lead to how a local challenge dashed the hopes of Jetstar and the Qantas Group in Hong Kong. After setting itself up as a budget arm of the Qantas Group, in the mid to late 2000s, the Jetstar brand launched its ventures in Singapore, Vietnam, and Japan. With a presence in those countries, it had a presence in Northern Asia along with Southeast Asia, along with the emerging aviation market in Vietnam. Still looking to expand, Jetstar was eyeing the city of Hong Kong, the major Asian hub, to bring its budget airline brand to the city. Spearheading the effort, Jetstar's parent company Qantas formed a partnership with China Eastern to form the new budget airline, Jetstar Hong Kong. This would lead to the filing for the Air Operator Certificate of Jetstar Hong Kong with Hong Kong's Air Transport Licensing Authority in 2012. In a city heavily dominated by Cathay Pacific, the first proposed budget airline for the city of Hong Kong filed for flight rights to 129 routes from Hong Kong, including a majority of them 48 to China and 26 to Japan. Similar to Jetstar's home operations in Australia along with the other subsidiaries, the airline started acquiring Airbus A320s, acquiring up to 9 of the jets in anticipation for its planned launch in 2013. Eager to launch, the airline would then meet local resistance from among some of the biggest airlines in Hong Kong like Cathay Pacific amongst others, which led to a mounted campaign opposing the launch of Jetstar Hong Kong. Voicing their opposition, the opponents against Jetstar Hong Kong's launch raised the issue of whether the airline was itself a local airline. And more specifically, they raised questions as to the principal location of business, whether it was in Hong Kong or somewhere else. Now, while Hong Kong is known as a free market where foreign companies are able to set up in the city, the aviation industry has some interesting laws protecting the local industry, and these questions of opposition to Jetstar Hong Kong surrounded an article on Hong Kong's basic law, Article 135, which reads as follows: Airlines incorporated and having their principal place of business in Hong Kong and businesses related to civil aviation functioning there prior to the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region may continue to operate. This would lead to a response by Jetstar Hong Kong to position itself as a local airline, as it took on board Shun Tak Holdings, a Hong Kong-based company. At first, the stakes were split 1/3 between China Eastern, Qantas, and Shun Tak before the decision was made to give Shun Tak a majority 51% stake in 2014. This would lead to a public inquiry to Jetstar Hong Kong. It would go on until 2015, which would see a public inquiry and the review of Jetstar Hong Kong's application to start services in the city. Once with a grand vision to start a new budget airline in Hong Kong, it would prove to be a nightmare for the Jetstar and the Qantas Group, along with China Eastern. With the airline selling all but one jet and never seeing its first flight, the final nail was hammered down in June of 2015, as Hong Kong's Air Transport Licensing Authority refused Jetstar Hong Kong's application for its operating license. After months of deliberations, the Hong Kong government found that the principal location of business was not in the city, saying, quote, "The day-to-day activities of the airline may be carried out in Hong Kong, but to satisfy the PPB requirement, its activities must not be subject to the control of senior management, shareholders, or related parties located elsewhere." The Hong Kong Air Transport Licensing Authority also looked into the corporate structure of the airline and pointed to provisions in the shareholders agreement. It concluded would not allow the airline to make independent decisions from the two foreign shareholders. Regarding the Hong Kong-based Shuntak's involvement, it stated, quote, "The quorum of the executive committee of Jetstar Hong Kong is 3 members comprising 1 from Shuntak, 1 from China Eastern, and 1 from Jetstar Group. This has restricted Shuntak's effective control over the decision of the ExCom, not to mention those matters described in the ExCom authority matrix that required unanimous consent of all ExCom members present at the meeting. This shows that Shuntak's control over the decision of ExCom is subject to the agreement of members from China Eastern and Jetstar Group." The decision was met with disappointment from Jetstar and China Eastern. It kept Jetstar out of the highly lucrative aviation market of Hong Kong, along with dashing an opportunity for China Eastern to get into budget airlines. Seeing a dead end of the venture, both airline groups would withdraw their involvement from Jetstar Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the decision was welcomed by the local airlines of Hong Kong like Cathay Pacific, though it wouldn't be long before a budget airline would be introduced to Hong Kong. The delay and the failure to launch of Jetstar Hong Kong opened the door for the HNA Group's HK Express, which was transformed to a budget airline for its launch in 2013. Later down the road, with the troubles of the HNA Group, Cathay Pacific would later acquire HK Express in 2019. When learning about this story, you can understand the frustrations of the group behind Jetstar Hong Kong, as from their perspective, they could see it as them being blocked by the Hong Kong-based airlines like Cathay Pacific and the Hong Kong government. In the end though, the rationale of the denial of the air operator certificate for Jetstar Hong Kong boils down to the governing laws of Hong Kong to airlines and the interpretation of it. I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia, highlighting the news and updates from the aviation and travel scene in the Asia Pacific. Thanks for watching and have a great day.